So dear students, this is Dr. Sadasivam, Faculty of History from the Institute of Bureaucracy. For today's lecture, we are going to see Khalji Revolution. Khaljis is actually one of the important dynasty in medieval Indian history. So when we take it up the medieval Indian history, it starts with after a Harsha. We are considering it as an early medieval Indian history. But this period is very important. It starts with the Delhi Sultanate around 1206 CE. In this, 5 dynasties actually coming, like the slaves or the Mamluk dynasty we used to say. Then we will come for the Khalji dynasty, and then we can come for a Tughlaq dynasty, and then Sayyid dynasty, then finally the Lodi dynasty. So the period actually exactly starts from 1206 CE and it goes on up to 1526 CE when Babur established the Mughal rule in India. So for this class, we are looking here how the establishment of a Khalji rule around 1290 CE is considered as a kind of a revolution. So we are looking here for why we are calling it as the Khalji revolution. For a mere establishment of one dynasty here, we are calling it as a revolution, but we are not calling it other Delhi Sultanate dynasties. When they established, we are not calling it as a kind of a revolution. But when we are calling, when the Khalji is establishing, we are calling it as a kind of a revolution here. Okay. There are many reasons actually here. Okay. There are many reasons actually here regarding the establishment of the Khalji's rule here in medieval India. Okay. So first thing actually here, we'll have some definition on the term revolution. So usually when we are using this term revolution, when the large scale sudden changes that are often accompanied with the violence. So we are calling it as a kind of a revolution. But here we are using the term revolution as the most important component for the establishment of a Khalji rule in India. First, we'll see that who exactly coined this term. The term Khalji revolution is coined by Professor and historian Muhammad Habib, who in his writings on the Khaljis and Delhi Sultans, he mentions the establishment of a Khalji rule in India around 1290 CE, considered as a kind of a revolution. The dynasty was actually founded by Jalaluddin Khalji, and after Jalaluddin Khalji, we can see the most prominent ruler of a Khalji dynasty, Alauddin Khalji, came here. The Khalji dynasty started around 1290 CE and ends around 1320 CE. In this, they plays a very important part in the expansion of a Delhi Sultanate here. But in this case, we are saying when they established the rule over a part of a northern India, we are calling it as a kind of a revolution. Why we are calling it as a revolution? The reason for that actually, the Khaljis were one among the 64 clans of Turks. Okay, so they were not in a very high social ladder. So socially and culturally, they were not in a very good position, taking up the social stratification of the Turks. So they were in a very least position in this category here. Okay, so this is actually the most important one. And the next important one also, and the next important one, politically, even in West Asia, as well as in India, or even their ancestors did not enjoy a political privileges, specifically for any kingdom. They were not belonging to the royal family. They were in a very lower position, even in the political side also. So, when the establishment of the Khalji rule around 1290 by Jalaluddin Khalji, after defeating the last slave ruler, okay, so this incident is actually considered as a kind of a revolution. And more importantly, Professor Muhammad Habib bringing the other important reasons for why we should claim the establishment of a Khalji rule as a kind of a revolution. When the Mamluk dynasty or the slave dynasties established their rule around 1206 CE with Qutbuddin Aibak as their ruler, then after that we can see Iltutmish, then we can see Razia, then the Balban, the most prominent rulers of a slave or the Mamluk dynasties here. These three rulers particularly, the Iltutmish, Razia and Balban, they established the slave dynasty in a very prominent way. In very prominent way, they established here. And more importantly, they wanted to establish themselves socially, culturally and politically more prominent and more superior than the other set of people. Okay, because they all coming from the background of a slave dynasty, slaves. Iltutmish was a slave of a Qutbuddin Aibak, and Balban was actually a slave of a Iltutmish. Razia was actually a daughter of a Iltutmish, but he was his father is actually once was a slave. Okay, so in this category, so they wanted to establish a superiority over other people in political, society and culturally. So they wanted to establish a certain superiority over the rest of the people here. So in this, they are following certain practices during a time of a slave rule in India. Some of the characteristics, if we look at regarding these three rulers, particularly Iltutmish and Balban, it was actually a very important categories and who should be the noble. Only a few categories of the Turks actually accommodated into a noble groups here. That noble groups played a very important part in determining all the activities of a Balban as well as the Iltutmish rule in Delhi Sultanate. Okay. So this plays a very important part here. So it was only a few categories of the Turkish groups which can dominate very longer period of time, or they can dominate politically and socially here. They're actually very clearly established during a time of a Mamluk dynasty. Especially the rulers like Iltutmish and Balban had done that. When we go and look at the theory of kingship of both Balban as well as Iltutmish also reflecting these aspects very clearly here. So in this background, when Jalaluddin Khalji defeated the last slave dynasty ruler, and when he established his rule, or the Khalji's rule in 1290 CE, is considered as kind of a revolution, not only from the political background, but from the socio-cultural background that plays a very important part in establishment of a Khalji dynasty here in India. Okay, thank you.